Welcome everybody to this My tutorial. We're going to be having a look at animation again today, and what I want to look at is parent-child relationships when it comes to animation. So what do I mean by a parent-child relationship? It's got to do with objects being dependent on one another. So what I'm going to make here is a very basic solar system, and it's going to be really basic because I'm only going to have one planet in it, but it's just going to demonstrate my point. So I'm going to create a ball, which is going to be the sun. So I'm going to call this, I'm going to name this in my outliner, sun. If you don't have an outliner, it's into Windows and outliner. Cool, I'm going to give that a material. I'll give it a Arnold shader. And I might give it a nice ramp for a color. Cool, there's my nice fireball sun. And I'm also going to make an earth. Not to scale, this is definitely not to scale, but this is just for illustrative purposes only. I'm going to create a new material for the earth. AI standard surface. And for that, I can give an ocean, but I don't think ocean. Oh, ocean will work in my renderer, so that's fine. But I might actually give it a water effect. And I'll change my water colors, if that's possible, to a nice blue. Lets me have a nice blue. Nope. There we go. So we've got nice, actually, I might ramp that up a little bit. Oh, and there's my offset. Anyway, I don't use the water shader anyway, to be honest. So I've got a sun and an earth, and I'm going to create a third ball here, which is going to be the moon. Okay, and I'm going to apply a new material to that. Assign a new material. And instead of giving this, I'll give it a color, that'd be fine. Give it a color, and I think a nice, did I see one that said crater? I might give it a granite and just change the colors to more moon-like colors. Perfect. Spot on. There we go. So now I've got a moon, earth, and sun, and obviously not to scale, but just for the purposes of showing parent-child relationship, that's all I need to do. So we have here sun. I'm going to rename this one to earth and moon. Okay, so in our outliner we can see that these are all on their own. So if I move the sun, it just moves the sun. If I move the earth, etc., etc. But what I can do is I can create a parent-child relationship. So what I'm going to do here is make the moon a child of the earth. So whenever the earth moves, the moon also moves, which probably isn't how it works, but for the sake of this tutorial, that's how it works. So now I've got the moon and the earth as a parent-child. So if I move the moon, it doesn't make any difference. It just moves as normal. But now if I move the earth, that means the moon moves with it. And what we can do is move that out there, and I can rotate this around. I'll rotate the earth, and the moon rotates with it, which is, it's going a bit crazy, my rotation. Anyway, I'm going to key that in later when I'm up to that. Cool. So similarly, I can scale that and everything will scale, or I can squash that in and everything squashes, which when you're playing with, when you've got parent-child relationships, you really don't want to scale unless you scale using this middle icon. And if yours starts to distort when you're moving it, you can use modify freeze transformations, and that will get you out of a lot of trouble. Good. Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do now is make the Earth a child of the Sun. So I'm going to right click, middle mouse button on Earth and drag it on top of the Sun. So that means I've got this, now I've got this 3-tier system. I've got Sun, Earth, Moon. So if I move the Sun, if I rotate the Sun, which isn't how it works obviously, everything's going to rotate with it. Cool. All right. Now what I'm going to do is create an animation out of this. So what I'm going to, so let's just say I want, I'm not going to do anything planetary here. I'm just going to type in, say, 300, which will give us approximately 12 seconds. 12-second animation, which is pretty good. I'm going to start at the start by pressing S to set a keyframe. Actually, I might actually tilt that. Tilt it. S to set a keyframe. And then what I'm going to do, instead of typing the same number, I'm going to go into here and type in my rotation around my y-axis, 360. And I'm just going to, I can just right click in here and set key. Look at that, beautiful. Oh, it's a little bit wonky, a little bit wobbly. It's probably because I've got my 15 degrees set up like such. Cool, so now I've got a Sun rotating around the Earth, which is cool. Oh no, Moon rotating around the Earth. And now I'm going to do the same thing with the Sun. I'm going to press S, then on my last frame, 300, I'm going to type my Y rotation to, I might make this one, I'm going to make 360. Cool. Once again, this isn't how the planets work. I'm not grading you on that. Right click on here and I'm going to set key. So press play. Okay, so you look at this and you think, okay, well, it is rotating, but it seems to be slowing up and speeding down. And this is what we learned last lesson with our ball squash and stretch. And hopefully you can remember that we need to go into the graph editor to fix that up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose this in the graph editor, choose Windows, Animation Editors, and Graph Editor. And what you should know before even looking is that when I go to my rotate Y, it's a curvy line. So that means it starts off slow, then speeds up, and then slows down, which we don't want. We want these to be nice and straight. So I can just select these two, choose tangents, and choose linear. So we've got a nice flat line. So I press play now. The Sun should rotate nice and evenly, whereas the Earth has a bit of a twisty sort of, it's probably harder to notice because of the added dimension of movement, but it sort of gets faster in here and slower here. So I'm going to do the same thing to the Earth. I'm going to choose that, go to Windows, Animation Editors, and Graph Editor. Choose Rotate Y because remember we're rotating around the Y-axis. And so this is appropriate to be a linear tangent because it's just going to be continually at the same speed. Cool. So let's play that one more time. Awesome. So we have a parent-child relationship. So we have the Sun as a parent of the Earth and the Earth as a parent of the Moon. And we have this relationship. So if we wanted to create another node and make the sun the child of it, then we can certainly do so as well. And we can also have multiple children of the Earth. So if I wanted to, for example, make Mars, once again, not to scale. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give that a material. Give that a AI standard surface. And I'll make a nice red kind of bumpy thing. So I'll make this nice and red. There's also like an orangey red. There you go. That's pretty Marsy, pretty Mars looking, which I'm sure has a bunch of moons and whatnot. And this will probably go to a different orbit than the Earth, but because it's just a parent-child relationship, this is going to take that same orbit as the Earth. Okay, so I'm going to call this one Mars. Press play, and nothing's going to happen, obviously. Why isn't it happening? Because we haven't told it to do anything. So what I'm going to do is take Mars, middle mouse click, and drag that on top of the sun, and then we have another child of the sun. Okay, cool. So once again, this isn't how the universe works. This is just demonstrating parent-child relationships and animation with those relationships. All right, cool. The last thing I'm going to quickly do is try to make a bit of a human type figure. Now, what I'm going to do with that is I might just make the top of a human. And this is going to be very basic. That's going to be the torso. This is going to be arm. It's going to be a lower arm. Make a head with which I think this is an obvious candidate to be a head. Okay, very good. Move these two. A bit bodgy, but anyway. Okay, cool. I'm going to duplicate that. Now this is going to be, I'm going to warn you about this later, because what I'm going to do here is I'm going to squash this, and that's going to cause us troubles. Whenever I squash an object to have this parent-child relationship, that's going to cause troubles, isn't it? I'm not going to create any feet or hands. This is going to be really simple. Cool. All right. Now what I want to do for this robotic kind of creature is create a hierarchy. So I want to, basically I'm going to start everything from this middle section, the torso, the hips, basically because it's a fairly standard place to start animation from, because I can bend my torso, arms and neck, and then I can bend my legs and whatnot off that. So I think it's a good way to set up what's called a forward kinematic rig. I'm just going to quickly name these. Torso, which I misspelt. Right arm. Upper. Right arm. Lower. Left arm. Lower. Left arm. upper. Sphere is going to be head. This is going to be hips. Right leg lower, or upper. Right leg, oops, spell, lower. Left leg upper. And left leg lower. Okay. Now, very importantly here, because I did scale the hips, what I want to do is choose Modify Freeze Transformations. If you're moving your robot around, or whatever you want to call it, if you're moving your robot around and it's doing strange things, distorting, chances are that you haven't frozen transformations. Okay, cool. I'm just going to tap space and go into this front view. And I also want to change where the registration points are. So I'm just going to press D. And I'm just going to move this because this is going to rotate in a certain way. So my shoulder rotates from the shoulder. It doesn't rotate from it doesn't rotate from the middle of your arm. Same with the elbow is going to rotate from the elbow. The head is going to rotate from, oops, I think I just stuffed up then. Press Option, I'm going to hold down D. Torso is going to rotate from the waist. The leg is going to rotate from the hip. And the lower leg is going to rotate from the knee. And if you want to put in feet, by all means do so. Cool. So now I need to, now what I need to do is adjust, make this hierarchy using parent-child relationship. So this upper arm is going to be a child, the lower arm is going to be a child of the upper arm. So middle mouse button. This lower arm is going to be a child of the upper arm there. This lower leg is going to be a child of the upper leg. Same again. Both of these are going to be children of the hips. The head is going to be a child of the torso. The arms are going to be children of the torso. And the torso is going to be a child of the hips. And I've misspelled torso, I know. So now everything is parented by the hips. So if I move the hips around, the whole body moves around. But for example, if I choose my torso, which I've stuffed up there, I believe, torso doesn't have the arm in it, so I'm going to move that to there. So now I should have legs, torso, and then head and arms. So let's have a look. What I can do is use my rotate and have my person look around. They can sort of bend over. I'll go to a perspective view here. So now we have this parent-child rig that we can animate to have a person moving around. The head won't really move too well, but because I've made this a chart, see I can sort of tilt it because I've moved the anchor point. I can move the legs and I can move the other leg. Very good. Okay, so what I'm going to do is animate my character. So what I'll do is I'm going to select all of the components here. Oops. To set a keyframe. Then on frame 100, I'm going to strike a pose for my character. Whoops, I don't want to do that. So what he's going to do, cool. And now I want to set all of these keyframes before I move it. I'm going to lose all that motion. So press S. And now we have a dabbing robot. Let's play that. Boom. He's a bit slow there, isn't he? Boom. Cool. All right. So what I want you to do is create both of this. You can make these as separate files. Create a animation of a solar system. Create an animation of a robot, and it doesn't have to dab. It can do whatever movement you'd like it to do. So we'll make this hierarchy-based animation. Save it, and we're going to hopefully be back in class to hand that in a couple of weeks. So that concludes this tutorial. Thank you very much.